Welcome to Truth Behind Travel Podcast, a platform for tourism, travel, and hospitality professionals and enthusiasts to share, learn, and unlearn what we need to create better tourism, protect the environment, and become better humans. I'm your host, Dolores Semeraro, and every week I bring on the podcast the voices of those out there making a difference to learn the hard truth behind the world of travel and tourism, what works and what we can collectively do better. Welcome to Season 4, a series of conversations fully dedicated to women in travel, the trailblazers, the visionaries who have been and continue to be the force for good we need to hear more from. Joining us on the show, I am thrilled to welcome Truth Behind Travel podcast sponsor, Women Travel Leaders. Women Travel Leaders is a community that supports high-performing, purpose-driven travel business leaders to grow their business in less time by fostering a community of heart-led leaders who prioritize authenticity and impact above all else. Are you ready to start thriving in your travel business and your life through connecting with a powerful community that truly has your back? Well, head over to the show notes and on the link, mention Dolores in the referral name to first access when applications open and receive 25% off your first year of membership. Welcome to another great and inspiring episode of Truth Behind Travel podcast. Today, we are heading to the fourth largest island in the world, Madagascar, to learn more about the truth behind the travel industry of this island country. I am thrilled to welcome on the show a pioneer of tourism for Madagascar, a person that has been raised and taught tourism through the lenses of nature, which then made her carve her path across this industry in the name of sustainability and resilience, when these two words weren't even a thing yet. She's a champion of sustainable tourism with over 3 decades of pioneering work in the tourism industry for the island. She has built and managed several successful tourism ventures in Madagascar and is now one of the only 5 in the world French GSTC certified trainers. Let us welcome Sonia Gottlebe. Welcome back to the show. Welcome, Sonia. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hello, Dolores. How are you?
I'm fine. And you're connecting from a very, very special place today.
Yes, I am on the 4th biggest island of the world, Madagascar.
I never made it to visit Madagascar. So I guess I said to you, it's one of my biggest regrets. So I'm really happy to have you on the show because I believe there's so much that needs to be highlighted about Madagascar. And I wanted to have your voice on the podcast as a woman in travel and as an expert of Madagascar, and to leave the podcast listeners today with a bigger, deeper awareness of what the country is today, what the tourism looks like, what tourism could look like, ideally, and really your opinion about how is it going? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges today in the country? So tell us a little bit about your journey to begin with.
Thank you, Dolores. I arrived in Madagascar with my parents as a kid, and I'm German born, but I sound French, I know. It's because when we arrived in Madagascar, there was no German school available. In fact, there are no Germans in Madagascar. We're about 200. And I started working in tourism very, very soon because I didn't study in Europe. And so I started as a German-speaking tour guide. I was 18 years old. Let's say I started much earlier because as a child with my parents, I've been sailing 2 years around Madagascar on a sailing boat. And my father is a botanist. So we spend lots of time on my holiday in the bush somewhere, collecting plants or analyzing animals. By having all these knowledge given by my parents about traveling Madagascar and biodiversity, it was pretty easy for me to become a tour guide because at those time in the 90s, Madagascar was not a touristic country. It was closed. It was communist. It was very difficult to fly to Madagascar. You had to fly through Moscow on Aeroflot, and it took 2 days, and it was very expensive, and the country was not open to tourism. Yes, I'm considered like a kind of pioneer. I'm feeling older when the people say that, but in fact, yes, I've been working over 33 years now in tourism here.
How does the tourism scenario of the country looks and feels like nowadays?
The scenario is not so good, honestly. It has been better in the past 20 years. Madagascar is normally it's a very resilient destination because we are used to crises of all kinds, political turnouts and epidemic like cholera or any kind of fear. We're used to that, but this COVID crisis was different because as an island, we've been closing the borders for 2 years and a half. So without flights. So that was really long and changed many things in this country. I'm not such a big fan of statistics, but I think it's important to talk about this because Madagascar is a destination that didn't recover since we didn't recover the figures from 2019 yet. In all the recent fact sheets, from these huge organizations like World Travel and Tourism Council, or even our own tourism board of Madagascar, they declared that, in 2019, we were very close to 400,000 tourists. We had about 375,000 tourists in Madagascar. That is still the best year ever. In this year, in 2024, we had from January to August, so I don't think there's a big change now until December, about 150,000. So if you see the size of this island, it is the fourth biggest island of the world. It's 1.5 bigger than France, just to give you a size of the country you can compare to. And we have 28 million inhabitants. So we are very, very far from over-tourism. There's no risk at all about over-tourism. We just want tourism. So you see the scenario is not very positive. There are many external reasons, like, for example, there are flight connections, but the flight connections are not done we don't have any national carrier airline anymore. We only do, with Madagascar Airlines, we only do domestic flights, which means we depend on the decisions these big airlines, the big players are making. So actually, the biggest players are Ethiopian and Kenya Airways, Turkish Airlines, Emirates, and at last Air France. So we have connected to South Africa, for example, but we get very, very little South Africans. Mostly are on business trips. So that means in the scenario is a bit like, I always say that I had the feeling that there are many trains passing Madagascar, and we do not jump on those trains. One of the biggest train we missed was almost, I think, about 15 years ago. We had this movie from Hollywood, Madagascar, and it was terrible. We never got $1 for that. And we did not get more tourists from that movie for a simple reason. Well, it was not a touristic commercial. It was a comic for children, right? The government here is so naive. They didn't even realize that you cannot use your country's name for a film without getting compensation. This film did much harm to us because I had to say on tourism show that I'm really from Madagascar because it's a real country. People thought it's not a real country. It's a movie. Tourism has the lowest budget given by government as well. There's no development scenario and no real interest in tourism in the country. I often say that most of Malagasy people do yet not understand what tourism is.
If you look at the destinations across the Indian Oceans that are very well developed in tourism, they are always looking into new strategies and what can be done to improve, to make better tourism, to make tourism more accessible to a diverse type of travelers. When it comes to a developing country like Madagascar, what do we need to keep in mind when we strategize about tourism development?
It's a very good question nowadays because we just learned this month that Madagascar is now the poorest country of the world with Somalia. And Somalia had a civil war. We hadn't, which is really something you have to consider. when you talk about any kind of economic development. It's really completely unfair because it's a rich country by itself. I mean, Madagascar, as I mentioned, is over 590,000 square kilometers big. And we have over 2,000 kilometers of beach coasts and little islands and everything like gemstones and vanilla and mining activities. Over 78% of the population of Madagascar are self-sufficient. They grow, everything grows here because it's like it's a continent island, but we don't have any earthquakes or we don't have any tsunamis by chance. So there are lots of opportunities that they're just laid down there because of poor politics. The Malagasy population is a very talented population as well. They have lots of skills in languages, so very good in German, for example. Of course, it's a very young country as well, and having lots of children per family. And they, as soon as they can access to education, they're doing well. So you see the strategy, if you're talking about development strategy, I would really, first of all, talk about we should have a general strategy for the whole country because you cannot isolate tourism from the others because tourism is transversal. So we can only do tourism if we have security, if we have educated human resources, if we have road systems, if we have planes, if we have something to eat, electricity and water. For example, there's much more, but as we all know, it's a transversal activity. So the whole country is, as the poorest country of the world now, the whole country is not set for that. Talking about developing plans is a bit well, we should talk about that, but it should be integrated in good governance and in a real plan for Madagascar. But like very often in African countries, they're unstable. And let's say every 4 or 5 years, we get a new government, even without elections sometimes, and they tend to forget all the work that has been done before. What I learned from this experience is that there are new key components we should consider. It's also because 20 years ago, we didn't talk so much about environment and climate change. It was not such a topic. It was more about eco something, but not sustainable tourism. For the moment in Madagascar, I would say we need an institutional framework first, a real institutional framework to coordinate everything that needs to be done to develop tourism in such a country. So we need electricity and water supply. We don't have actually. In most of places, hotels, everyone, even travel agencies, they are self-sufficient in water and electricity because we don't get enough from the government. So we have all solar power and we have huge water tanks on our roofs, even at home. So imagine for hotels how difficult this can be because they are not eco-lodges. They are in the city. In Tananarivo is 4 million big city, and you have huge hotels. Well, huge, I mean like 100 rooms is already huge for Madagascar. But and you have conference rooms who need big generators at least to get light during a conference. Then we need roads. The road system is terrible, and in rainy season, which starts now, the rainy season starts in December until March. You have about 3 or 4 national parks who are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, very, very iconic places, like the baobab trees behind me. This place, you cannot go there by car because the road system is completely down and there are no bridges, and so you cannot even sail Madagascar in the rainy season. The second key component, beside this institutional framework, is to teach tourism, because the population really needs to understand the population. Not stakeholders, because stakeholders in tourism want tourism. It's their job. But what about these small communities on islands, the fishermen villages? What about any kind of people who live near to the natural conservancies, for example, because they're not allowed to get in anymore? So there's a big lack of these inclusive discussions that is going on for years and years. It's my personal analysis, and I'm not always popular by saying this, but for me, it's very often a mistake that has been implemented by international organizations, by donors, because Madagascar is a big playground for donors, because we need, I really say playground, because we're giving jobs to hundreds of consultants who pretend helping us to prevent Madagascar's biodiversity destruction. But did they ever really look for how long they have been here and how much money they spent and what is the result? It cannot be only tourism who can solve this, because we have so very little, very little. I mean, you see the figures: less than 200,000 tourists a year cannot pay enough entrance fees, for example, in national parks to save them. There must be other solutions. It's not my job as a consultant in sustainable tourism to say that Madagascar is really a part, because here it's not the tourist that is a danger for the environment. It's the poverty and the poor politics are the danger, because the tourists coming actually to Madagascar are really nature lovers. It's such a special destination. They come, it's a long flight for most of them, because from Europe, from Paris, for example, it's 11 hours. From United States, it's twice as much, because there are no direct flights from the States. You have to fly to South Africa first. So you do not decide Madagascar for a weekend. So these programs should, first of all, really make sure that the natural environment of Madagascar, which is really the basis of our business here. It's not monuments or museums or casinos, or the only big attraction that is unique to Madagascar is its biodiversity. That's what we should preserve the most. The local population has not been included from the start. We start to think differently now, but it's a bit late, because I know several places where tourism was completely misunderstood. So the local people just thought, well, if white people come, they bring money, they are walking wallets, and I take the money, the most I can from them, but without any idea why a tourist comes to his place, what he wants to see. And so it was very badly prepared.
The people working in tourism are not having it easy. The tourism arrivals are literally barely covering the minimum viable offerings that are there. And I really wonder, I mean, how do they do it? Like, how do they even survive with such a big destination, so diverse, north to south, coastal to inland, and having so very little arrivals? We always talk about involving the local community, creating a circular economy, reproposing the wealth generated by tourism. I like your example of, moving wallet when tourists come to Madagascar. I think it's quite a picture. And it is true, because by the sincerity and genuinity of people, it's without a background knowledge of what tourism represents for the growth of the country and the community benefits, like that money that these walking wallets are bringing in are not just there to live today for tomorrow, but they can be used to build something that has a longer impact, that can really create a legacy. And the local talents that really are part of this enduring, resilience and strength to really repurpose tourism, to rebuild it, if not to build it from scratch, really. It's not even a question of rebuilding, because it sounds like there is a lot that needs to be built to begin with.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most underrated talents? What are the hidden talents, so to speak, of the Malagasy communities, of the local people, that could really be brought up to light and become a prime feature of the promotion of the destination? Because I see Madagascar being promoted in every major outlet. We talk about WTM in London, we talk about ITB in Berlin, ATM. Madagascar is always there promoting the destination, but are they promoting the people?
The Malagasy have a complex. They have an identity problem, a real huge identity problem, which explains why they're very calm people. There are many I like the word, underestimated talents and unheard voices in the small jobs of our tourism supply chain. Many. As many of them don't get access to good hotel schools for many reasons. In my hotels, I had about 40% of illiterate people, illiterate analphabetic adults. So they were very able to work as a tour guide. Is very. We were always in forest or in mountains. So most of my activities was about hiking or lemur spotting or bird watching, for example. And you could give them, I gave them books, but if they can read, they can at least learn themselves with the book. But if they cannot read, you need to train them in a different way. So, for example, in one of my hotels, we did a very basic. We tried to find out how can we train these adults. That is also part of community-based tourism, right? And I found out I was very often surprised by some hidden talents in my own teams. Because they just they are looking for a job, so they come and ask for a job. If they ask you, they tell you, "Do you need someone for the beach?" I said, "Yes, a beach cleaner. Okay, you can clean the beach." Then I found out 6 months later that the guy was able to skip a boat. I said, "Why didn't you ask me?" Well, I didn't dare to tell you that I know how to drive your boat. See. And so I found out that it's very important to interact with these people the most you can, because they are shy and it's not in their culture to be intrusive. They're not. They didn't get this Asian thing. They are not like this Asian thing to work hard and whatever. Well, they take life is easy here, right? We have a credo. It's mora mora, which means slowly. So slow life has always been existing here. If you work too much, you die soon. I mean, this is something we should learn from them. That's why I told you, tourism is very often not understood. They're not against tourism. They're not tourists, but it needs to be, there's a huge gap. I mean, there are touristic places in the islands where you have already lots of tourism development, like Nocibe, north of Madagascar, a small island. Nocibe is well known for over 30 years, and they get about 60% of tourism arrivals. So it's like, you see, they're really, they're all, I would say, self-made talents.
Yeah.
The pity is that they don't get any financial support to launch small, they could launch a small tour operator company, or maybe to have a loan at the bank and buy bikes for biking. But they don't even try this because the bank system is not for them.
It's like the story that comes to my mind is the dog that bites his tail, and they can't develop because the system does not support. That's not even a huge development, even the smallest step for them to begin with. You touched upon something very important earlier, that is the connectivity. But one of the realities that I personally came across is by being in a camper van on the island of Crete in Greece, is that seasonal flights really have an impact on how the destination sustain that tourism generated wealth, meaning no flights, no tourists. The local businesses are ready to completely shut down until next year comes March or April, until the flights start again and the tourist comes to the destination. So Madagascar has a connectivity issue, starting from the very baseline of not having a national airline. Where is the fine line? So no flights, no tourism, no tourism generated opportunities and wealth and development. But flights equal tourism, equal more emission, more planes. Where is the fine line for Madagascar?
I would say it's just like what we say, NA. It's not applicable in Madagascar. We just need a little bit tourism, please. Nobody will swim to Madagascar. I've seen that in not long ago, about 60 years ago, you used a boat from France to Madagascar. It took 5 weeks. one way, 5 weeks. So on these fantastic boats, like not like Titanic, but not so bad. And they came down from Marseille. They left from Le Havre, if it was northern France, or Marseille from the Mediterranean, and took the Suez Canal and came down to Madagascar. This was the first natural way to come to Madagascar because we are on an island in the Indian Ocean. On all islands around, right, like Mauritius, Réunion, Seychelles, it was the same, mostly the same boat. And then later on, when the first flights started, it took 12 days. The first direct flight, they called it a direct flight from Paris to Madagascar, took 12 days. That was a sensation. And I did this trip myself from Madagascar up to north. I did it in 5 days in a small aircraft. It was an adventure as well, but you cannot do this anymore because most of places we stopped over are on war. There's war everywhere in Africa, like Somalia, Ethiopia. There are many dangerous places, and so it's not. And of course, it's also expensive. So we use flights where these charter flights are very, nothing to do with EasyJet, or it's not that. It's charter flight, but it stays expensive. For sure, we will never get any hydrogen planes flying to Madagascar because it's too far. Because these new generation of aircrafts, they can only fly, as far as I heard, 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers. Those aircrafts flying to Madagascar yet are for sure the old, the old unresponsible aircrafts for sure. And there's no solution until Madagascar is shifting apart from the Gondwana land. So we're not getting closer to the continent for a long time. But the way to be more responsible, that's what I always told my clients, is you have to stay longer. Madagascar is most of our stays, the length of the stays here are about 2 to 3 weeks. If you look in any brochure, if you benchmark what they sell in Germany or whatever, Madagascar is minimum 2 weeks, 3 weeks, up to 1 month, which is very good for Madagascar because this is also, we didn't invent slow tourism. It happens because of the size. So the other companies coming are great because they are opening new markets and opportunities for new source markets. There are no direct flights from such a distance. I mean, from Paris, we have only Air France flights. And you know what's funny? It's that Madagascar we are officially net zero emission. This country is net zero emissions. And for example, the Air France Foundation is buying his carbon footprint, is compensating in Madagascar. We are also a playground for all these. It's another discussion. I don't think we should go into that, but there are other countries playing also with Madagascar on that field. I mean, on that playground that they buy carbon in Madagascar. It can be mangrove, or it can be coral reefs, or it can be just like forest.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. There's a perception of Madagascar around the world, and there is a strategic sort of use of that image from people outside into, towards the destination. It's almost as, to me, it seems like the Madagascar tourism does not really own its own narrative at the moment. And it's really subjected to what other tourism operators need to develop around it or aim to. And we had a conversation, you and I, about the really, really diverse type of tourism that can be highlighted in Madagascar. Is not just one type. Like, for example, you go to Maldives and it's about the beach and the tourism related to the underwater, the diving and the relaxation, the luxury experience. Or let's say every Indian Ocean destination, just to remain in the neighborhood, has its own positioning. And when I think of Madagascar as a person that have been, so close by for so long, but yet never visited, to me, it speaks of, wilderness, of remoteness, of perhaps not a comfortable holiday, but certainly an adventurous one, a safari on so many levels, perhaps, and biodiversity, marine life, wildlife, bird life, as you mentioned. It's if the perception of the destination could be helped now, knowing that we are going to bring this podcast out, the conversation is going to hopefully start and inspire many others to dig in a little deeper. What is it about Madagascar that I didn't know? What is it that I know and now I know better? For example, what is it that I thought it was true and it isn't? So I hope that this podcast episode will bring that sort of value and impressions, and truth forward. But in your opinion, if you were looking at the best type of tourism that could be developed for the destination and really could be put forward, that the type of tourism in terms of tourism offerings, but also in terms of tourists, that could really bring the most value for the longest term, what would that be?
There are lots of examples that inspire me nearby, because I don't use examples that wouldn't work here. But I'm inspired by South Africa, by Botswana, Botswana is really a bit special because it's a small country, and they have diamonds as well. There are lots of wealth, but they are developing high-end luxury tourism, expensive tourism, because they say we are too small to get more tourists, so we need to control the number of tourists. And they also visit these iconic natural sites like the Okavango Delta, for example, and you cannot expand this. And there are also local communities in conflict sometimes with these visitors. So they are they're doing responsible tourism development for real. And their motto, their credo is high value, low impact. So I think looking at our figures, as Madagascar will never get lots of foreign investment, and what for? I mean, to build lots of hotels and to get more airlines and to get more tourists. This is what, unfortunately, many governments here, many ministers in Madagascar declared. But well, unfortunately, they never stay long enough to do any harm. But because it's if you declare that you don't want more tourists, but that you want to improve that you want to improve the quality, I think we should go that way, like Botswana and also like South Africa. The type of tourism in Madagascar has always been, nature-based, adventurous. I used to say we are a big niche of niche tourism because we have lots of niches and the whole country seems to be a niche finally. But I think we shouldn't sell Madagascar. It shouldn't be for sale, in supermarkets to become like a cheap product with cheap flights and cheap packages. Because I mentioned too, the population is not ready for tourism in many places. So if you have uneducated travelers who are existing, come to Madagascar without knowing how to behave, nobody will tell them how to behave because the government is not doing its job, then you might really harm the population. And this is already something we have signs of. For example, I have seen terrible images on I'm a motorbiker with my husband, so we went to all over Madagascar. And if you drive on a motorbike behind a bus of tourists, I've seen once and twice, several times, that people throw out of the window, not plastic bottles, they throw out money or sweets or pencils to the children who are begging. Now they are begging along the street because they do not even stop the bus. So it happened to us several times that we almost drove over children because of that reason, because they said, oh, now I know if it's a bus of tourists, as you don't know how they behave, keep your distance, because the children never think that the motorbike will be immediately behind the bus, and then they are on the street and collect sweets. I mean, they are not animals. How can you behave like that? It's already happening, and it's not mass tourism, but it's really misbehavior. And unfortunately, I didn't meet these Basque people again because I would have told them how to behave. But so you see that maybe they had the driver and the local guide who were not able, who were too shy, because they are shy, to tell these tourists, don't do this. We have to control who is coming to Madagascar before they're here.
But it's a lot of, I want to make a point here. It really made me think of an experience that I had myself in Morocco. It's to begin with, it's the information that the tourist, in that case, I was a visitor, a traveler of the area. And I was told before getting there by other people that were there before me, if you go to that place, and you are on that street and you're driving your camper van or so, make sure you have pencils with you. Make sure you have these things because they really need it. They really want it. And so what do you do in a good spirit, in not even thinking that you are actually doing something harmful, you prepare yourself a little pouch of pencils, and when the opportunity comes, I wouldn't throw it out of the window. Yeah, that's a bit extreme. But if we were stopping with the van, we would hand out these things because we were told that it was okay. So that was my personal experience. Imagine just these tourists that perhaps have received this type of information or were encouraged in the wrong way to behave like that.
Yeah, and but I do not agree. I was a tour operator for 33 years. And in 2018, I started my little NGO beside the company because I wanted to separate these, the touristic, the capitalistic touristic activity, let's say, and to make very clear what I'm doing on the humanitarian side. And so that was my solution given to all tour operators who signed with us in Germany and in other countries, because I told them, well, don't if you want to help, I mean, you send people to one of the poorest countries of the world. There is guilt, there is misunderstanding, there's an emotional shock when you arrive at the airport. But thank you for coming to Madagascar. Thank you because by traveling to Madagascar, you give so much work and hope to so many people in our industry. And then there are projects, there are organized structures, organizations, schools or projects going on all over Madagascar where you can help. So you help directly there. I can do it for you. And so it was to make clear that the money, their funds do not come on our company's bank account. So it was a separate bank account. And this solidarity was about it was not charity. It was organized. Well, I think it was thanks to my husband, who used to work for the Red Cross, the International Red Cross and Handicap International. So he said, well, this is how we structure. He structured the whole thing. That's how I learned by experience that, okay, I'm a tourism entrepreneur. I try to do well, but things went wrong also on my side too. And because you create expectations, when you bring a group of clients into a small village, the village is beautiful. Everyone says bonjour, bonjour Vaza, and so on. If you start once distributing one pencil, the next time you bring another group, it said, do you have a pencil? And then there are like 50 or 100 children who want pencils. And maybe, but if they have a school, go to their school and give the pencils to the teacher, or maybe they don't need pencils, they need something else. So in community-based tourism in developing country is something different. It needs to be, there are rules who are existing. It's well, I think the criteria, everything is set. It's just that you need more time to implement all of this. You need to prepare the destinations, the little destinations, and to choose places, because you cannot change the whole country. So you choose one or two or three communities, and you discuss with them, interact with them, and find out what they need. And then you organize the whole product. And then comes the discussion, is this authentic? No, it's what is authentic tourism? Everyone wants something authentic. Authentic is not stopping anywhere and doing any kind of, crap.
Authenticity, I believe, having spoken to operators that offer, so to speak, authentic journeys or the off the beaten path or the hidden gems and all these buzzwords to describe a tourism product, a tourism activity, an experience, and we are very good in the tourism industry at try to make ourselves sound good, trying to get a little bit away from the buzzwords or from the bad words. And I had an opportunity once to conduct a workshop about the difference between a tourism activity and a tourism experience, and how, what the difference is, and really what is the human factor that really makes a difference, and what does that human factor represent and brings, and to what extent we as travelers are entitled to interact to that human factor, because the more we interact with that, the more we contaminate it. It's just as simple as that.
Exactly.
And I think there's a line between good tourism and monitored tourism, because monitoring tourism, it's not only about monitoring the behavior of the local communities and how they behave with tourists, but also how tourists behave with them. And I think in many cases, we have a lot of work to do still there. To bring tourism to a destination is not enough if the tourists to begin with are not trained about the destination. You want to train the locals, but we got to train the tourists first. I think as much as we are investing in educating communities and local talents, who educates the tourists? So I hope that a conversation like the one we had today that unveils the good, the bad, and the ugly of a destination, helps people understand that perhaps they come with all the good intentions, but not all the good intentions do good, right? That's at least how I would frame it.
The last, I would say the last 10 years of my tour operator career, I changed my mind on how to market Madagascar because of all these experiences. And so about 20 years, I was exhibiting myself on the tourism board stand on the main trade shows. And then I found out, well, I was bored. It's always the same and same routine, and tourism is evolving. So I found out that it would be more efficient for my own activity to do sales training, really sales training, go to my main partners. I thought I had enough. Well, I tried to find new agencies as well on each time. And I went from agency to agency with my marketing guy or a Madagascar tour guide as well, with a huge Madagascar map, with some Madagascar chocolate, because we're famous for our chocolate. This makes always people friendly. And then we had about 1 hour. It was like a one-man show, just showing pictures and explaining and talking and sharing about Madagascar. 2 product managers who are in charge of selling Madagascar. But unfortunately, this was well, for me, it was very time-consuming and expensive, because I had to travel all around Germany and in South Africa, from Cape Town up to Durban and so on. But and then with these e-tourism, I mean, with these OTAs and with a new way to sell on huge platforms, I've seen those agencies I've never seen in Europe. In South Africa, huge selling platforms where you have about, 30, there are no product managers. They're just selling destinations like crazy, and have like in a call center, having their headset on, and they speak all kind of languages and sell to Brazil. So they work at night. Others are selling to Asia. They work in the morning. And so it's impossible for me to train all of them. So the product, and I noticed that the product managers had more and more countries to know, and so they're not experts anymore of any country. So maybe there is also something that was a topic we've been talking during COVID times, was virtual. Remember this virtual Google stuff? And well, it's a bit weird, but I think we could maybe use this type of technology to prepare them. and that they should be really, like you said, okay, you want to come to Madagascar, I would like to teach you Madagascar first, learn something about Madagascar. If you don't want to come anymore, it doesn't matter, because if one person is unhappy, you lose 10 clients. But if you have one happy client, you get much more. So it's important to find the right people, or maybe bloggers could be also people who can contribute to have a better marketing. But then bloggers, you pay them, so they're not really neutral.
My hope is for a destination that, and I spoke to other destinations where they unfortunately don't have that government support. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have budgets to really create the base of tourism offering. Safety, water, food, transport, healthcare, and these are basics. When I see and when I bring the voices of tourism operators like you on the podcast, that really are not just there fighting for tomorrow, but actually really believing that it's really about the everyday value that you put forward, and you are putting that value forward in every training you offer, in every workshop you conduct, in every time you speak about Madagascar. And the way you're sharing information today on the podcast is so it's transparent, as it should be. It doesn't come from a place of bad feeling from the government. We're not criticizing any politics. We're just talking destination management. And as a woman, I can't help but asking my very last question. How does a woman in tourism work in Madagascar? How does it feel like? You've been there for many years. How does it look like?
Working in Madagascar as a woman, it's completely safe and easy. We have, well, it's a bit contradictory. The Malagasy people are full of paradox. So they say, well, they respect women because women give children, So that's the first reason. When you get married here, I got married twice in front of Malagasy law. You get the wishes that you get seven boys and 7 girls. There are 14 pages for children in your family book. Oh. So no, I stopped with 3. So you see where they have another criteria. The wealth is to have children. But in my company, I never had any gender issue. It's not a problem here because women are respected. And in my company, we were a majority of women. I think we were about 70%. 70. Why? Because only women are reliable and in this country. So mostly reliable and working hard. Handling children at the same time, it's not a problem, and very human. The Malagasy men in my company were doing jobs women shouldn't do, like, I don't know, physical work, Sometimes in some regions you have lots of Muslims in the north of Madagascar, so they're sometimes a bit well, they do not really listen, or if you're not very strict, they do not listen to you. I used to organize. I did 3 ultra trail. It's something I didn't mention before, but we did sportive tourism as well. Ultra trail running, 150 kilometers in 3 days, and this happened in the north of Madagascar in Diego Suarez. And so I did this event. I organized it with my husband. And in this region, we had some problems. I had sometimes problems to communicate with the drivers or with the cook, because they didn't just listen to me. They didn't listen to me because I'm a woman. But it's the only place in Madagascar where this happens. And then I told them, well, you know what? If you don't listen to me, I'm going to pay or not to pay. Then they started to listen.
We use all the means we can, but I mean, of course, it's an example. But I'm so glad that you share these examples, because many women, especially the podcast listeners, are women working in tourism, and they are working in often in remote areas with cultures surrounded by a cultural background that is foreign to them. and they adapt, they're resilient, they continue to work, they do their best, and they succeed. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. We've touched on many important issues and points and truth about Madagascar that I'm so glad we brought up, because a lot of the things that are known and thought of about this destination could use a little more, information, could use a little bit more awareness and consciousness. I took so many notes myself personally. So I'm really glad that we had this opportunity. On the show notes of this episode, our podcast listeners will find more about you and how to get in touch with you through your LinkedIn account. I encourage everyone that wants to know more about Madagascar to get in touch with Sonia. I've never met a more passionate ambassador of a destination. Thank you so much.
Mi Sonja Tupko.
Which means?
Merci beaucoup.
Oh,
Dankeschön.
okay. Dankeschön. Thank you. Grazie. And all the
Grazie.
best for the work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dolores.
Thank you for joining me and Sonia today on the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your community, your family, your friends. Link it to your next social media post. And if you have a moment, send me your feedback. I'd always love to hear from you. See you soon on the next episode. Be well, my friends.